On the way to a family reunion, my husband went pale and whispered, "Turn the car around now." I was stunned. Why? "Just turn around, please." I trusted him and it saved us. When I found out why, I never saw my parents the same way again. Our plan was simple, almost laughably so in retrospect. Leave early, snacks in the back, a thermos of strong black coffee for the adults up front. Drive for a few hours, cross the border into Canada, hug the people I hadn't seen in a long time, and pretend that my Aunt Karen's potato salad was actually good. It was the annual charade of familial obligation, a pilgrimage I made more out of duty than desire, a performance for an audience of relatives who measured love in proximity and attendance. The very air in the car was thick with the scent of manufactured normalcy, brewed coffee, a cinnamon-scented air freshener dangling from the rearview mirror, and the faint, plasticky smell of the kids' new neck pillows. Everything was supposed to be normal. A little boring, to be honest, but that was the goal. I was driving. I always drive, mostly because I hate my husband's last-minute braking, a habit that sends my stomach lurching into my throat, and also because motion sickness is one of my many God-given talents. The kids were in a half-awake, half-asleep state in the back seat, their eyes glued to cartoons on a tablet propped between the front seats, occasionally bickering over the invisible lines on the seat cushions. All three of them, Ben, at 10, was already developing a cynical preteen slouch. Lily, my 7-year-old, was lost in the world of animated princesses. And 5-year-old Sam was mostly just along for the ride, his thumb firmly in his mouth, a lovely, chaotic mess in their matching dinosaur-themed neck pillows. Everything was fine. Not magical, not miserable, just fine. The landscape rolled by in a monotonous blur of green and gray, a perfect backdrop for the quiet hum of the engine and the low-volume squabbles from the back. Until he said it. "Turn the car around now." His voice was a whisper, but in the cramped space of the car, it boomed like thunder. It sliced through the mundane atmosphere, sharp and cold. I glanced at him. My husband's face, the face of a man who always remained calm in any storm, was now as white as a sheet. His knuckles were white too, gripping the edge of his seat as if bracing for an impact. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching, a tiny, frantic drumbeat under his skin. At first, I didn't react. Or I did, but only with a smirk. A natural reflex when you think someone is joking, but the joke isn't funny enough to laugh out loud. "What's wrong?" I asked, my eyes still on the road ahead, the green sign for the border crossing looming larger, a symbol of the point of no return. "Forget your passport?" Because I checked, twice. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the long highway stretching before us, his gaze fixed on something I couldn't see, something beyond the horizon. Then he repeated, his voice more urgent, the whisper now a strained rasp that scraped against the quiet interior of the car. "Please, just turn around." That's when I knew it wasn't a joke. My husband, David, never panics. His default states are calm, casual, and sometimes a little tired. I had once seen him put out a small kitchen fire without a hint of stress, just quietly grabbing the fire extinguisher and handling it as neatly as if he were making scrambled eggs. The panic in his voice now was a red alert. It was the kind of fear that bypasses logic and speaks directly to your primal instincts, the kind that screams, "danger," without needing to explain why. I trusted him. Without a moment's hesitation, I flipped on the turn signal, my hand moving with an autonomy that surprised me. I steered onto the last exit before the border, a looping ramp that felt like a lifeline. The ramp curved gently, as if the road itself was giving us a second chance. As soon as the car was off the highway, I felt his body relax slightly. Not completely, but enough for me to see that he had just shed an invisible weight. He let out a long, shuddering breath he seemed to have been holding for miles. "Okay," I said, my voice a forced calm, trying to keep the tremor out of it. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Can you tell me what the hell is going on now?" He shook his head, still looking out the window as if expecting to be followed. "Just drive for now, away from the highway." "Drive where?" I demanded, my own anxiety starting to fray the edges of my patience. The carefully constructed piece of our morning had been shattered, and I was left holding the pieces. "Anywhere," he said, his voice still tight, "as long as we get away from here." The kids in the back started to notice something was wrong. The sudden detour, the tension thick enough to taste. Mommy, did we take a wrong turn? My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, asked, her small voice cutting through the heavy silence. I answered immediately, a lie popping out quickly and tasting like ash. Oh, we forgot something important at home. Forgot what, Mom? The oldest, Ben, asked, his brow furrowed with the sharp suspicion only a 10-year-old can muster. He was old enough to know when the adults were hiding something, and his eyes in the rearview mirror were narrowed, analytical. I'll tell you later, sweetie. It's grown-up stuff. The youngest, Sam, spoke up, his voice sleepy. Did we forget the snacks? I didn't answer. David was silent too. A heavy, suffocating silence filled the car. We drove like that for about 20 minutes, maybe more. All around us were just long rows of trees and a sense of unease pressing on the back of my neck. The familiar landscape now felt alien, hostile. Every car that appeared in the rearview mirror felt like a threat, its headlights, a pair of accusing eyes. Finally, he spoke. Take the next turn. It was a small dirt road, barely more than a track, with no signs and no clear purpose. One of those roads you only find when you're lost, or about to be. I pulled the car over to the side, the engine's hum the only sound in the sudden stillness. The dust settled around us like a shroud. He unbuckled his seatbelt. Stay in the car, keep the doors locked. He got out and walked around to the back of the car. From my seat, I couldn't see what he was doing. I just sat there, waiting, my fingers drumming a frantic rhythm on the steering wheel. My palms started to sweat, my heart was pounding, fast and hard, as if it knew something my mind hadn't yet grasped. A minute later, I heard the trunk close with a dull thud that echoed in the silence. He came back to my window, his face grim. Can you get out for a second? What for? I need you to see this with your own eyes. His voice held no anger or fear, just a weariness and a terrifying certainty. I got out of the car. The air was cool, smelling of damp earth and pine. He led me to the back and opened the trunk. He didn't say a word, just silently unzipped the red duffel bag my father had given us the night before. For the kids' extra clothes, he'd said with a jovial smile, patting the bag like an old friend. His hand flipped over a sweatshirt that was on top. And that's when my world stopped. Inside, wedged between layers of clothes, stuffed into what looked like a child's toiletry bag, were packages wrapped tightly in plastic. A lot of them. They weren't hidden very well, just lying under the first layer of fabric, a flimsy disguise that any customs officer would see through in 5 seconds. I stared at them, my brain taking a few seconds to process the information, and then a horrifying truth hit me. This wasn't medicine, not vitamins, not anything legal. This was the kind of thing whose presence always came with handcuffs, lawyers, and sensational newspaper headlines. The kind of thing that could lead to life imprisonment. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Every muscle in my chest seized up. It felt like I was free-falling in slow motion. He didn't need to say, "Look what they did to us." He just had to zip the bag shut and let the silence say everything. I took a step back. The gravel crunched under my feet, sounding alien, as if it belonged to another world. They put it in our car, I finally managed to say, my voice breaking. He nodded, his eyes heavy with a pain that mirrored my own. They put it in our car. With the kids, I added, a wave of nausea rising in my throat. The image of my children in the back of a police car, of social services getting involved, flashed through my mind. Our lives, meticulously built, shattered in an instant. He nodded again. For some reason, I looked up at the sky. It was still blue, still a beautiful day. I hated it. It felt so bizarre, as if the universe was carrying on as normal while my life had just been turned completely upside down. The betrayal felt so personal and devastating, shaking the very foundation of my sense of security. How? How did you know? I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer right away. He stared at the closed trunk, as if he could still see through the metal. When your dad gave me the bag, he finally said, his voice low. He said something strange. He clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Thanks for carrying the load for the family." I didn't think much of it at the time. But that phrase, carrying the load, kept replaying in my head the whole drive. Then, When we stopped at the gas station earlier, I saw a car that looked exactly like your sister's parked in the distance. It sped off the moment it saw us. My heart started pounding. I had a very bad feeling, like we were walking into a trap. He looked at me, his eyes filled with exhaustion and pain. I wasn't sure, but I couldn't risk it. I couldn't let you and the kids face that at the border. I turned and walked slowly back to the driver's seat. I got in, slammed the door, and sat motionless for a moment. The heat from the sun beat through the windshield, but I only felt an icy chill run down my spine. My hands were still shaking. Then I started the car and drove away. This time, the kids didn't ask any questions. They were completely absorbed in their cartoon world. They had forgotten about Canada, forgotten about Aunt Karen and their cousins, forgotten about the little toys I had secretly packed for them. We drove aimlessly. My phone started to ring. First, my mom, then my dad, then my sister. One call after another. I didn't answer. Neither did David. We didn't need to listen. We knew what they would say. Where are you? What happened? Are you okay? Where's the bag? We just kept driving. The phone screen lit up every few minutes, a nagging reminder of the betrayal. Finally, as if on autopilot, I steered toward my parents' house. We didn't say a word to each other. We both knew what had to be done. I pulled into their driveway and parked. The porch light was still on from the night before, even though it was the middle of the afternoon. David got out first, walking around to the trunk. I followed. He took out the red duffel bag. I reached down under the doormat, found the spare key, still in the same spot, taped to the back of a fake rock my dad had bought from a catalog. He opened the front door. We stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of old coffee and carpet cleaner. We placed the red duffel bag right in the middle of the hallway. Didn't open it. Didn't adjust it. Just set it down, like a silent bomb that didn't need to detonate to destroy everything. He turned the knob, locking the door behind us. We got back in the car, still without a word. I think we both felt that speaking would shatter the heavy silence. That afternoon when we got home, the kids were fast asleep and the house was quiet. I finally listened to my voicemail. It was my mother. Her voice was breezy, fake, as if this were just a casual check-in call. "Oh, honey, we were so worried. We didn't know what happened. You just disappeared." She paused. "Is everything okay?" Another pause. "The bag. Where's the bag?" I took a deep breath. Then I called her back. She picked up instantly. "We left it at your house," I said, my voice as cold as ice. Silence. "If it was so important," I added, "you should have carried it yourselves." Her tone didn't change, but I could hear it. The slight flinch, the sudden silence that told me she knew exactly what I meant, and I knew exactly what she had done. She said nothing. Neither did I. Then I said, enunciating every word, "We're not doing this anymore. Don't call me again." I hung up. That was it. No screaming, no tearful accusations, just a line drawn and a door slammed shut. And that should have been the end, but it wasn't. They showed up the following Wednesday. No warning, not a single text, just the doorbell ringing as if they were delivering a basket of muffins instead of a load of guilt. I knew it was them, even before looking through the peephole. There's a certain pressure that emanates from the front door, like static in the air, especially when it's people who believe they've done nothing wrong. I opened the door just enough to slip outside, then closed it firmly behind me. My parents stood there on my porch, looking as if they hadn't just tried to ruin my life with a smile and a duffel bag. My mother wore a well-practiced, strained smile, the kind that looks warm but doesn't reach the eyes. "We wanted to come see how you were," she said, as if we had just missed a lunch date. My father added, "We thought maybe we should clear the air." I remained silent, crossing my arms over my chest, waiting. My mother hesitated, then said, "We don't know how much you understood." There it was, the indirect admission. They knew. I knew. They just didn't know how much I knew. I tilted my head. "You mean the bag? The one you put in my trunk, right next to my children's things?" Their silence was the clearest answer. "We were desperate," my mother said, her voice turning sharp when she saw that silence wasn't working. "And who pushed us to this point? You did. You have everything. A happy family, a good husband, but you couldn't share a little with the people who gave you life. We only asked for your help for your own nephew, and you refused." If you had been a dutiful daughter, none of this would have happened. My father chimed in, his voice full of bitterness. You always think you're better than everyone else, don't you? Always living by your rules. But your rules are just selfishness in disguise. Family is supposed to stick together, even when it means doing difficult things. You've forgotten that. The familiar excuse, the backup accusation, as if their betrayal was the natural consequence of my boundaries. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. A cold calm washed over me. You didn't just betray me, I said, my voice even. You gambled with our lives. You risked your daughter, your son-in-law, and your own grandchildren. My father shifted his weight. My mother blinked rapidly, as if trying to hold back fake tears. We're done, I said. Don't come here again. You will not see the children. This is over. She opened her mouth to speak. I could almost hear the classic line she was about to deliver. You're overreacting, or you'll calm down eventually. But instead, she just said, with a faint smile on her lips, you'll change your mind. You always do. I turned, walked back inside, and locked the door. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't wonder if she was right. 3 days later, I went to pick up the kids from school. They weren't there. My stomach clenched, a cold panic seizing my entire body. I just stared at the teacher, who was saying something my ears couldn't quite process. Oh, their grandparents picked them up, the teacher said with a friendly smile. They said you had asked them to. I don't remember the drive. I just remember being in the car, and I remember the sound of the engine roaring, but I don't remember anything in between. They were at my parents' house. Of course they were. Inside, the scene looked like a surprise birthday party. Toys were strewn across the floor, candy, balloons, and a giant Lego set that cost more than my entire week's grocery budget. The kids were ecstatic, clutching their new possessions, laughing as if this were Disneyland. My parents acted as if everything was fine. My mother was cutting a cake. My father was on the floor, building something that beeped. The scene was surreal, like stepping into a parallel universe where they were the kind of grandparents who valued giving over taking. Except they weren't. And this wasn't love. This was strategy. It was emotional bribery. It was affection as a weapon. They had never spoiled the kids like this. Never. But suddenly, right after we cut them off, Grandma and Grandpa had turned into Santa Claus with a debit card. I stood there for a moment, trying to remember what it felt like to trust someone. I couldn't. We're going home, I said, my voice firm. The kids started to whine. But why? Grandma said. We're going home, now. They didn't understand. Of course they didn't. How could they? They were being told yes by the people who had told them no their entire lives. And they liked it. It's easy to like. Can we keep the toys? One of them asked, clutching a teddy bear as if it held the answer to everything. I hesitated for a second. Then I nodded, because taking the toys away would make me the bad guy. And I wasn't going to let my parents win that way. As we were leaving, my mother called out, her voice sing-song and sweet. They'll come back to us. They always do. She said it like it was a fact. She said it like a promise. She said it like she still thought she could win. That night, I didn't wait for a magical sign or an emotional breakdown. I just sat down on the bed, looked David straight in the eye, and said, we have to get out of here. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. I don't want them near the kids anymore, I continued. Not at school, not at the grocery store, not anywhere. He nodded slowly, as if he had already been thinking the same thing. You mentioned North Carolina once, I said. Your company has an office there. Your parents live there too. I wasn't ready then, but I'm ready now. He nodded again. The transfer offer is still on the table. Good, I said. Take it. No drama, no hesitation, just a quiet decision to burn the bridge and never look back. I didn't need revenge. I needed distance. I needed a fresh start in a place they couldn't touch us. A few months later, we were in North Carolina. The mountains were beautiful. The air smelled of pine and new beginnings. The kids were settling into their new school. My in-laws, warm, practical, and kind people, lived 20 minutes away and genuinely wanted to help without asking for anything in return. We blocked numbers, deleted social media accounts, and disappeared. Not in a romantic disappear to find yourself kind of way, more in a we deserve to be at peace kind of way. About 6 months after we moved, when the new life had settled into a routine, I received an email from my sister. The subject line was, "Urgent, please read." I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part wanted to mark it as spam. But in the end, curiosity won. I opened it. The email was long, rambling, and full of typos. But the main point was clear. Our parents had been arrested. This time, not for indirect stupidity, but for directly doing the very thing they had almost gotten us caught for. They themselves had tried to smuggle something across the border. No middleman, no family scapegoats, just a car full of contraband and two people in their 60s who still thought the law was just a suggestion. The email ended with a plea. They needed help. They needed money for a lawyer. This is serious. You have to put the past aside and show up. We're family. I read that line 3 times. The anger and pain welled up inside me, but this time, it didn't paralyze me. I hit reply. "Sister," I wrote, my hands typing decisively, "family is not an excuse to destroy each other's lives. I have chosen my family, my husband, and my children. I have chosen their safety and their peace. That is the most important time to show up. Mom and Dad made their own choice when they put that bag in my car. Now, they have to face the consequences of that choice. I will not use my money to buy them a way out of their responsibilities. I hope that one day, you too will find the strength to protect your own little family instead of continuing to live in that toxic shadow. Do not contact me again." I hit send without a shred of hesitation. It wasn't an act of revenge, but a declaration. I was no longer the boring or rigid one. I was the protector. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. Later, I heard they pleaded guilty and each received a 4-year prison sentence. Enough time to reflect, if they were capable of it. As for us, we have our life here. It's not perfect, but it's ours. The kids laugh more. My husband sleeps better. And I haven't had to turn guilt into silence in a very, very long time. The boundary I drew, I never regret it. Not for a single moment. Family is not always a safe haven. Sometimes, the people we love most are the ones willing to put us in the greatest danger for their own selfishness. Boundaries are not walls that block out love. They are a defense mechanism to protect your own peace and safety, and that of those you are responsible for protecting. The core lesson here is the courage to say no, the courage to refuse a role that isn't yours to play, and the courage to break a toxic cycle that has persisted for generations. Choosing to protect your immediate family from the negative influences of your extended family is not selfishness. It is the deepest act of love and responsibility. Ultimately, true freedom doesn't come from running away from the past, but from confronting it and making a firm decision. You deserve to live a life free from manipulation by guilt, and sometimes, the best way to love someone is from a distance.